Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange Podcast. Stories by leaders for leaders to help you raise the bar on your own excellence, to release the potential inside of you. Now, here's today's podcast. Hey friends, welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange. It's Tuesday again, Russ. We got another good guest today. Thanks to you. You reached out and talk to Laurien. So, Russ, how are you today?
It's a fine day here in Aurora, Colorado, right by Denver, and we've got Laurien Towers, a brilliant lady who's done a lot of events, and she's here to share her wisdom with us about how to run an event for your nonprofit and some of the things that will enhance your success.
Well, with that lead in, Laurien, welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange.
Well, thank you, Hugh and Russ, very much. It's an honor and privilege to be here with all of you and share it. I love what you guys are doing, and I've watched diligently in the last few months, actually, since Russ and I have been talking about this. So, yes, I've been an event producer for, oh my goodness, it feels like my whole life, over 30 years. And I have worked on huge events, live global satellite shows. Began with Live Aid, then I went over and I was in the former Soviet Union for a number of live telecasts and concert events. I did a film project with them. I have worked in the Caribbean to do a number of things, and I don't do just large events. I've worked with several wonderful smaller nonprofits. Just came up to Bellingham, Washington a few years ago to work with one and did their annual small one. I've worked with churches and kids groups and Save the Whales and the Oceans and things. So I'm very well versed and love doing events for causes to help them raise money, awareness, to make a difference and expand what they do, the great work that they all do.
Thank you for that. We have some specific questions we want to ask you, but before we get into that, I want you to give us some perspective. Why should people have events? Just give us like 3 or 4 points of why people should have events. And then what's an example of an event that went wrong? You know, sometimes we want to do events to raise money and we lose money.
How long do you have? No.
I want to get into the questions, so just give us a summary.
Okay. I prefer to focus on the ones that work, but in any case, why people do events. The first obvious one is that they want to raise money for their cause, their organization, their church, whatever. And so how can we have a big party and get people here to help support us? But that's not really the only reason. Sometimes it's a new organization or they're just moved to a new location, a city, and you do it to invite the community in. I like to imagine it's inviting them to my home to see what I do and what I'm passionate about, and hopefully, inspire them to be as passionate or excited about what it is I care about doing as I am. And so a lot of it is about awareness and outreach, expanding your base, whether it's just community relationships, and then of course your support base for donors. Long term, to help you do what you love doing.
What are some things that people need to look at? They think, okay, I want to have a fundraising event. Maybe it's a dinner. What are some of the things that people need to look at before they make a decision whether they're going to actually try to do an event?
Okay, well, the thing is, for me, it always starts with the strategic plan and really, where are you? Looking at reality, where you are right now. What resources do you have? And I don't mean just financial. I mean support. Do you have a staff? Do you have a staff that is 100% dedicated to what they have to do every day, and they've got a huge workload, so they can't possibly take on another thing to do? Or you have volunteers. You have someone specific that can focus their 100% time on doing an event. That's a really key piece. Because when you get into the event will take takes on a life of its own. I don't care if it's a bake sale or Live Aid, they all become morphed into, they're like a living entity. So you look at the resources you have, your team, identify your strengths, and if you don't have it, what do you need? And is it easily accessible to you to do it? And sometimes people start off with, oh, we want to do this huge event because it's going to make a difference and it's fun and oh my goodness, people get excited. And then you look at it and go, well, I really can only do a bake sale. And that's okay. You know, start where you are. Stepping stones, I believe in stepping stones.
Yeah. And so there are a lot of parts to unpack, and sort of getting back to what Hugh had asked a little earlier. Talk about some of the things you've seen happen when some of those key pieces are missing, these events that sort of went off the rails. Do you have a couple?
Yeah, excuse me. I think the first thing is you just not clearly defining your goals and not really knowing, identifying who is going to take on which role to make it happen. Getting ahead of yourself, not following step by step. See the goal. We're going to have this festival. Where are you now? Where are you going to have it? You have to consider weather, the locations, all the things that could go wrong. And believe me, if you're doing a live event, something will go awry. And you will have to, what I call, punt. You're at the, fourth quarter and you got to, watch the football game on Sunday. So you have to be prepared to do that. And I think that's really the key piece. The one I see over and over again, people just don't. They jump in, they don't have a clue. They start promoting it before they really have all the pieces in place. And then they have to backtrack. So it's taking time. A lot of it is you don't have enough lead time either. I see that thing. Oh, we could do that next month. No, you really need a significant amount of lead time to prepare properly.
Are there some specific rules of thumb, maybe in general, that people want to look at from a time perspective, as far as how much or how far ahead we need to look at this for an event?
My key always has been that to do a minimum lead time should be 4 to 6 months. You're asking for extra problems and challenges to show up if you do it any sooner than that. And then also it depends on your location. Weather is a factor. Both you and I, Russ, and Hugh in the last month couldn't do things outdoors. Or if you planned it, there's a chance that it was going to have to be postponed. So those kinds of things you take into consideration. Other events happening in your area, pay attention. There are event calendars everywhere. If you want to do an event, but there's 10 others happening in your within that period of time, they're going to take your audience. They're going to take the people that could come and support you.
What types of things kind of go into looking at who the audience is and who you want to bring into your event?
Well, again, I think it's about, what you're focused on. I heard you the other day talking about the homeless community. So the people that care about that cause, that's where you want to go. And who do you want to identify? Who would you like to get engaged with your organization, your cause, who is not already aware of it? Sponsors, your legislators, the mayor, the Congress people, if that's where you're going, if it's political. Reach to the audience that you want them to come and help support you and be there, but you want to broaden your community, because I would think the reason you're doing an event is to broaden your outreach in all areas, including funding, because the more people you have on board, the more support you can at least have access to.
Yeah, I think everything costs money, and it requires some thinking about what sort of expenses you're going to have and revenues. Mm-hmm. So there's the dreaded B word.
I know.
Budget. Uh,
Yeah,
talk a little.
everyone loves to talk to me initially because I love to brainstorm and I love to create, and that's what can we do, and that's the fun part. And then I say the B word, budget, and they go, oh no, 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 we don't have a budget. Well, you have to have a budget, even if you get absolutely everything donated, which I successfully did last year for an event up here. We were not out of pocket for any of the things we needed. And so everything that came through was support for their funding goal. However, it's not always the case. So you do have to create a budget. And if you're going to need it for your event, it should have a cost line item, even if you know someone's going to give it to you.
What are some of the items that you should include in your budget? I know there are an awful lot.
Okay, first would be, where are you holding the event? Where's it going to be? If it's in your own living room, that's one thing. So that's not a cost. But usually there's a venue cost. There is sometimes staffing costs. There's food. There's catering. If you want to have beverages, even if it's a conference and you're just going to serve coffee. My goodness, I'm just going through all of the items that you would need to have. Off the top of my head, the easiest things. Your promotion, your printing. How are you going to get the message out to let people know? Social media is very popular, but there are a lot of people that will attend your event that don't do that. Depends on the demographics. Again, know your demographics. If it's a really, youthful audience, social media is great and email is great. But there are times where you want flyers and posters.
Are there some common line items that you see people miss repeatedly when putting a budget together? What are some of the most common line items that people overlook when planning for an event, when they're doing their budget?
I would say the things that people most often overlook are the obvious ones. If you're going to have a silent auction, you have to have pencils and paper and, pens for people to sign up. And they get left at the office quite frequently. I've seen that happen over and over again. The other things you don't take into account is oh my goodness, budgets. What do they leave? They leave off, oh, you want decorations and you didn't get that kind of thing. You want to offer a giveaway and you didn't plan ahead enough time to get the pens with your name on it so that you can give something away to the people that are attending as a thank you. I've seen just ridiculous things. You're having a bake sale, there's no water or juice or coffee, or you forget the silverware for the plasticware. You've got the plates and the napkins and all the decorations, and there's no utensils. They're really, as many events and as many items as you can think of, people leave them off.
I think also, Laurien, people think about booking a room, and it's going to be an evening event from 7 to 9.
Right.
They don't think about how long it's going to take to set up, how long it's going to take to clean up.
That's right.
So you don't, and so part of what an event planner says, okay, how long is it going to take you to set up? Well, and what time will people arrive? So it needs to be set up by 6 maybe, and then it's going to take you 2 hours to set up. Then you got to be there at 4.
Right.
Then who's going to break down? Many times the leader gets stung and says, oh, I didn't have a teardown crew. So some of those things cost money. You can book a room for 2 hours, but if you go to 6 hours, it's going to be a different cost.
That's correct. And if you, and so it becomes, instead of a 2-hour event, it's a half a day, because that's how long you need the venue.
Russ asked us a little earlier, and I wanted to probe into, if we're planning an event, so CenterVision's planning an event in May. So it's February, first part of February. So we got March is 1 month, April is 2 months, May is 3 months. So we got 90 days to put it together. How do you determine how much time you need to promote an event and pull all the details together to hold the event? Is there a magic formula, or you have some paradigm for?
Well, I think I've touched on them before. The 3 months is it's respectable. You probably already have an idea in your mind. You've planned what this is, and you've really done it prior to just starting as of today, only 3 months. And you just want to know so if you're having whatever your event is, your speakers, you want to line them up. You get everybody in place ahead of time. Kind of, you're getting a sense of what you need to do. And I'm sorry, my cat just attacked me, so I think I missed the last part of your question.
Well, and what we're doing as leaders, we think about the event, and so I'm just trying to think about, why would we want a person like you to help us? Well, part of what I'm thinking about is to challenge me on my budget assumptions, challenge me on my timeline the day of the event, challenge me on my timeline on lead time for the event, and then challenge me for thinking through my goals for the event. I might think it's just to raise money,
Right.
but you might say, well, Hugh, yes, but part of it is to let people know more about the results of what you're doing and to give them places to be engaged. So just saying asking for money and they go home, well, you need volunteers.
Exactly. Yeah, those are all the components. And yes, you're right. If someone hires me, it's like they're saying, this is what I want to do. I want to raise money, and that's it. No, you want more. You want people to get excited so that you gain a support base. You do need volunteers. I believe unless you have a huge budget and you can pay for absolutely everything, you need the volunteers. You need to plan the setup, the breakdown time, the extra things that need to happen during the event. And you want to let people know at the event, besides asking them for money, why are they supporting you? What are the great things that you are doing? And what are the wonderful things that you plan to do if you now raise this money? And it's a return on investment for a nonprofit is not just dollar signs for an investor per se. It's about the impact and the that you have on the lives and the community, or the cause that you are making a difference in a positive way for. You want people to go away feeling like, I now understand a little bit of why Hugh is so excited about his organization, because it's got this bigger vision that I wasn't aware of before.
Well, and also we're putting together the articles for our next Nonprofit Performance magazine, and it's all around brand. And brand is not your logo. That's a pretty picture. Your brand is what you stand for, and every event you do represents your brand. And I've attended a few local nonprofit events. They've been dinners that are also a pitch for money. Here's what we've been doing, and here's what we're going to do next, and here's a card on your table.
Right.
Or a luncheon. Well, one of them, there was a lot of trouble with the technology. The videos didn't play, the mic didn't work for the presenter, and the luncheon meeting was an hour luncheon. Well, I had to leave at an hour and a half, and the speaker wasn't done. And so there's some variables like that. What's the start time? What's the end time? And have you thought about the production of the event? What is each element going to take? And by the way, have you scheduled a rehearsal on site so that you can check all the technology? So, but those, I want to tell people that you've offered an event checklist, and it's 5 bullet points, really good stuff. And so there are lots of things like that I would assume, but I didn't want to assume that a person like you would help us think about all these little things that when you add them up, they really help you represent yourself as a better brand.
That's true. And that checklist I gave is just a very brief, the first 5 key things you need to look at. And there's so much more, as we're talking about now, that goes into an event. And if it's a concert, yes, you have to have sound checks. If you're doing a performance, which I just did a few months ago, you have rehearsals. We had 2 rehearsals at the same venue. I had to book it for that. We did our testing, our video, our audio, making sure everything worked. The piano, the musicians, all of those pieces go into it. So those are the things that, the talent is going, oh, well, I'm just going to go sing. Well, that's great. But the behind the scenes is what makes it happen. So the audience is happy and they can hear it and they have a good experience and it's not a disaster. And yes, someone obviously needs to be there to say, okay, the speaker, you're supposed to have 10 minutes and you've just gone into 20. We are way over, the guy with the hook, that old thing. Get him off stage. She's got to be gently prodded to say, okay, we need to move this thing along because we have an audience we will lose, especially if it's a business like you and a conference. I mean, you guys are busy and you don't have time to expand what you thought was going to be an hour meeting.
Absolutely. So I sort of wedged my way in. Russ was on a roll here. So
I appreciate it because this is good. Thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate it.
Well, I wanted to also point out that on the page for your podcast on the nonprofitexchange.org, it'll take people to the podcast and then they find yours. There's a link to download that guide and it'll be there. So you did a checklist for doing events and it's a good basic guide, but I think and your email's on there. So if they want to contact you to ask you some questions, then
absolutely, please do. Be happy to do that. And there's so much more. And when people do email, if they go to my website, there's a way that you can indicate your question and I will get back to you.
Right.
Right, yes, and we have the Center Vision Leadership.org. We have a new community here, and we do Q&As here. So it's a great place to join. There are a number of levels to join at, but you can ask your questions about anything nonprofit. You can ask those here as well, and we'll make sure that Laurien is there. And we have a lot of folks that we're connected with so that we can answer all those questions for you. Yeah. So, one of the things we talked about were volunteers. What are some of the things that you find are attractive to people to entice them to volunteer? What are some of the motivations that you've seen with people who volunteer to staff different charity events?
Well, I think some of the volunteers, usually the volunteers are already supportive of your cause. I mean, that's something they're passionate about. And sometimes it's their students and they don't have time or money to get involved in a bigger way. And it gives them the opportunity to be involved, have more fun, get to a concert, for instance, and they're helping to promote it so they don't have to buy the ticket. They get to see it and participate. And I believe in, feeding them and supporting them in every way and saying thank you, being grateful to everybody, including sponsors, just, showing your appreciation and gratitude. And the volunteers that I've had always come away with saying, wow, I got so much more out of this than I felt that I gave. And that's makes it very rewarding, I think, for them. And they find, maybe a lot of them have found out that, wow, I really want to go into this field, whatever field it is, because they had the volunteer experience.
Who in the organization should take point on this? I know some organizations are large, they have access to a lot of people, but who should really be your point person inside of a nonprofit to take on this challenge? And
go ahead, I'm sorry. I think the person that is the most comfortable with being really, really well organized and that can see the big picture. You have to be able to see the big picture in order to backtrack to where you are and what steps need to be taken. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I really recommend that one person is, whoever can do that, that's their main focus, is making this event. That's their priority, and all the pieces, and then identifying at least one other support person at least that can help do the details and the follow through. And there are so many pieces to follow through. I mean, you want registration. Who's going to respond? What if somebody buys a ticket and they want a refund? I mean, there are all these just minute details, and you need to know and have team members. You need to have weekly meetings, almost sometimes daily when it gets really close, to say, okay, where's the checklist? Who is responsible for each of these sections? And did you do this? I've been at events where we were talking about what gets left off a budget. It needs to be on the checklist as well. We have things, and I literally we're in the office, brand new boxes, and it was across town. We had to go across the street and buy a whole new set because we had silent auctions and people had nothing to write with. And we had a conference and had no one. So it's those little minor details you need to say, who's responsible, whose job was that to be responsible for it. And so it's important for those things.
What are some of the things that the board can do to help support that person? Because obviously if that's their one job and the event is big, that's a big job. So how can the board support that person and set the table to help that person succeed?
Well, if you have a board, I believe that I was the executive director for a nonprofit for years, and the board is supposed to be supporting the executive director to do the job. So you're having an event, they can go out and help you obtain sponsorships. They can help you find the volunteers. They can be the ones that can take on a role in support. What do you need to have handled? Do you need the catering handled? Do you need greeters? Do we need who's going to present more information about the organization versus just one person? I think the board has to be engaged, and events need to follow the integrity and the overall vision of what your organization is about. Because if they're not on board, you'll have a little bit like pushing a boulder up a mountain.
That's quite an analogy in the picture. Yeah, we've got a lot of mountains up here, so you'd have it's hard enough just to get up to the top of them without pushing or carrying anything. Those 14 Ks that we have.
Team effort is really important. Boards, volunteers, staff, it's very important.
So what kind of special functions would certain staff members in a nonprofit take? Are there certain tasks for events that specific staff members in an organization would be suited to tackle?
Well, I think that, I want someone that can handle a database. As we're getting inquiries, you want to, capture those email addresses, phone numbers, information, ticket sales. We used recently, it's called brown paper tickets, which helped a lot. But a lot of people didn't go online to do that, and they were at the door. So and then capturing the information. Data, I think retention is a big deal, because you want to continue to build your database for ongoing events and things like that. Answering the phones, taking registration, following up with your catering needs, someone that can be responsible if they're, capable of having the venue, make sure that all your permits are in place. You have insurance, a liability insurance if you may need. Getting all the details that the venue needs you to have. And then, of course, then there's talent, speakers, those kinds of things to handle appropriately, and making sure that all their needs are met. I've done a ton of concerts. As you have to have a green room for your talent and make sure the food and all the necessities there are there for them to make them comfortable and have a good experience. If you have audiovisual people and techie people, you want them to help you with the I believe in documenting your event, even if it's just a photographer, because that's another way for future promotion. For your website development, who's handling your website?
Lots of moving parts for sure, And, one of the keys to being successful as a nonprofit, whatever you're doing, is for people to know about what it is that you're doing. Are there some common pitfalls that nonprofits have when they're looking at marketing in an event, and what sort of things should be included in marketing? Because that's a really broad term. So what are some?
It's a really broad term. You want to get the information out about, the who, what, when, and how, really. who are you and why, why would people want to come to your event? Not just because of the event, but why would they want to come and then support you? What makes you different and unique? I've got a calendar of events in front of me. Why should I go to yours that particular day? So get your information out. Again, social media, we touched on that earlier. It's a big deal now, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, all those things are important. But I think the emails, the personal touch, if you've got personal contacts, call them, let them know, send an email, a specific, sometimes a private invitation to a pre-event or something to make it important to them to know what you're doing. And not only what you have done, but what your goals are. Why did you get inspired about getting involved in this cause for your reason? You want to have other people have that kind of experience to get ignited, to want to be involved with you and support what you're doing for fundraising and or just awareness. We've had kids, just go door to door to take out flyers and posters and go get them in storefronts. We're excited, and a lot of local organizations. Sponsorship is a whole nother category, but you have a lot to offer sponsors to come on board to help you as well.
Can we explore that just a little bit? Because it's convincing sponsors. That's not a donation. That's a marketing dollar.
Yeah.
The sponsors want to be in front of your audience.
Right.
So do you help people think about the messages they need to communicate to sponsors or why it's good for their business to have their brand associated with the nonprofit?
I do that all the time. In fact, on the last event I did, I was fully sponsored. So all of our costs were covered by in-kind sponsorship. Sometimes that doesn't, I think in-kind sponsorship is easier to obtain normally. My experience with nonprofits than it is to actually get the cash donation or sponsorship in. But you create a sponsorship package up front in the beginning when you're doing your strategic planning. Look at what you do have to offer. People tell me all the time, we don't have anything to offer. Yes, you do. You have a venue. You have put signage up. You can put the banner up for the sponsor. You have an information table at your event, wherever you are, that gives the sponsor ability to be able to be in front of your audience to give their message. How are they tied in with you? Why are they supporting you? Let them have access, 1 minute to address your audience about why they're sponsoring you and they care about what you guys are doing and that's why they're involved. There's a lot of things that they can do. You've got a website. Help them have a presence on your website. Promote them. Let people know what they're doing. There's a lot you can offer to a sponsor for in-kind. And the printing sponsor is probably my favorite because we need printers. And if I can get a printing company to be excited about what we're doing and get their information out there, I have someone help me do my banners and my program and my flyers and posters and all kinds of things like that.
All sorts of things could probably be sponsored. But what are some of the common mistakes that you see nonprofits make when approaching sponsors? And even what are some common misconceptions that people have about what sponsorship is or isn't?
Oh, I think the common, they go in almost, I don't know, how can I say this? Not saying the things that they can offer the sponsor, not doing enough research to see what it is they believe the sponsor would entice the sponsor to be involved. What is the sponsor looking for? Think about that, not what you're asking them to give or promote, to offer you or pay for, but what can you go into? This is what we can do for you to expand what you're doing, and in kind you would be helping us. It's almost like the reverse view of how to approach someone. And I do that with who you're inviting to the event as well. What are they going to gain out of being at your event? Whether it's the ticket, the purchaser of the ticket, the attendee, or a sponsor. Look at what you can be of service and what you can be offering them, and not what they can only be giving to you. I think that's some of the mistakes.
what are some good examples of the type of value that a nonprofit can put on the table to entice a sponsor to come in that sort of meets what they're looking for?
Well, I think part of the value is, how large, what is your event? Who's your demographic? Is who you're inviting to your event, whether it's 200 people or 1,000, are they the audience, the demographic that the sponsor wants to be in front of? Are they the ones that are going to help expand the sponsor's business? Is there local clientele? I mean, the local supermarket may be able to provide you for some of the items you need for your green room, for instance, or your catering. And those are their constituents. Those are their customers. They want to be there and say, yeah, we're here for you, and we're in the community, and so come by and come to our establishment versus someone else because we're supporting your cause. Banks, also, if you have a banker, people don't understand who they can go to. So if you have an insurance company, do you have a bank? Yes, you do. You have, doctors, massage ordinance, companies, anything that you frequent is a potential sponsor. If they can be excited about what you're doing and see what they can offer. And if nothing else, if you're going to have a silent auction, that's who you go to. Get them to contribute an item for your silent auction, and they get promotion, and they're donating it, and so they're getting their information out or their product out, and you're getting some support that helps you with your fundraising.
So every sponsor is going to have a different motivation, really sort of based on their business. Are there some good rules of thumb in general that a nonprofit can use when approaching a potential sponsor? What would you say are some things they should consider before approaching a potential sponsor?
Well, I've walked in, I guess I've done that so frequently. I walk in and I just let them know what the organization is, what we're doing, why it's important, and we would love your support in this way. Sometimes I think instead of you telling the sponsor what you want for them, it's almost like getting in a conversation. How do they see themselves being able to support you and participating in one way? Sometimes it is writing a check, and I didn't expect it, but I got a check from one. I thought it was something else, and they gave a check because that's what they wanted to do, and I was pleasantly surprised. And others were. I'm part of the Chamber of Commerce here, and we had an event a couple months ago, and I put out a senior discount deal, and I said something about the organizations that will buy a block of 10 tickets, will get the senior discount or whatever it was. And I had 5 sign up right away, which means I had the tickets sold, I had sponsors, I put their name on a banner, and which we were already printing. I mean, it was a win-win, and it was very creative, and it was a pleasant surprise, and it was a lot of fun, and everyone had a great time. So I think that those are the things. You just approach them. They are excited. I think people really, I have found, they really want to help support, and sometimes they just don't know how. So if you give them different options. I walked into one years ago, and I just was asking for a silent auction item, and they came back and they donated toys for all the kids for Santa to give away. I had no clue that was going to happen, and it was they had them left over. It was free. They needed to get rid of them, and it was a blessing all the way around. So it's sort of be open, be creative, and let those kinds of things come.
So it almost sounds like, and for some folks, making an ask can be a scary proposition, but it almost sounds like, hey, take a chance, because you just never know what sort of underlying motivation they may have, and you may be pleasantly surprised at the result.
I have been quite frequently, and definitely when you're having the event, you just came up with the magic 3-letter word. A lot of people fail to do the ask. If it's a fundraiser, they fail to do the ask. And you need to have someone, if you're not the one comfortable to do the ask, find someone who is, and very effective
Is there any one specific person that you find that businesses and potential sponsors are more responsive to when that ask is given? A certain staff member, a certain board member that they respond to more than others?
Um, I think it comes down to a lot about the personality, about the person who's asking and how passionate they are about the cause and how much they believe in it. Definitely, if they have been touched personally themselves and have a personal story of this organization did this for me or my family or, our cat and dog or whatever it is, the personal stories, the quote unquote testimonial kinds of things, I think those are the ones that trigger the greatest response in people giving. I was a director for medical medicine for humanity actually for years, and the difference that people's lives were changed. We had one of them that came from Uganda to speak about how their life was touched by this organization coming over. That absolutely, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. Those are the stories, and those are the ones that you want to have. At least maybe they don't physically do the ask, but they're telling their story, and then someone comes up and says, "This is how we make a difference, and we need your help to do so."
As a percentage of the time that you spend presenting your program on the organization, is there a good mix of people who benefited from the work you do? How much time is devoted to them, and where do you put them in your program if you're running one?
Okay, I'm not quite clear about the question, Russ.
Well, as you have an event, you have a program,
Right.
usually that where you make presentations on some of the work you're doing. The people you're serving, how much time do you allocate in that program to have people maybe give a testimonial in front of the audience?
Right. Again, it's totally dependent upon what kind of program you have, but you don't want to take too much talking head time. I mean, that loses. You want it to be effective. So you pick the most, maybe, depending on, again, the length of time. I mean, I know Hugh, I'm sure, knows this. Get the people that are really the key people that are really going to be the most powerful. Take that time. Maybe intersperse them if you want to have more than one, so they don't just come right back to back. Have it be a different timing. And then I would say that maybe I wouldn't do more than, it depends on your program, but I wouldn't do more than 10, 15%, percent of your time to donate, to devote to that. You want them to have a good time, whatever it is, even if it's, conference, get the information. What did they come there for? And then this is the added pieces that you spice it up in between.
Yeah. So I imagine with limited time, there's probably, if you're putting a program together, is there a specific time in a typical program that would be the best part of the program for placement of these kind of people to talk about the impact the organization has made in their lives?
Probably, halfway, midway through, I would do the entertainment. You're kind of getting excited, depending again what your event is. If you have entertainment, if you have video presentations about your organization, those kinds of things, and then follow it with someone that maybe can speak to what you just showed or what did just happen. Entertainment is wonderful, singers, performers, and dance, and then right after that they've had the fun, their excitement, maybe the silent auction, they've had a break, they're going to do that. They come back and give the other, remember why we're here kind of thing.
Okay.
And you want to flow. You want to have it reach a peak and then continue, but not completely go down until the finale and get people together. And then end it with something entertaining and fun. That's how I try to do it.
And I imagine that's tough to do, especially if you don't have any experience doing that. So that would require an expert that has a lot of cycles through that type of thing.
It really is. It is entertainment. I mean, no matter what it is, you need to capture the audience. You need to entertain them in some way, whether they're there for a very serious business conference or something, but whether it's a luncheon, a cocktail party, or just coffee. But it's community. I mean, it's not a party, but it is. Embracing people come together and as a community to get them kind of excited. And if one person sees someone else getting excited, that's infectious.
You've mentioned videos. Videos, maybe people do videos, and there are a lot of different things that can be done to market an event and an organization. Is there sort of an ideal mix as to what type of marketing materials that you produce, or is that variable?
Well, I think, it depends again on your organization, what your message is. If you do have a really quality video presentation, put it on your website, offer it, elsewhere, do it on Facebook, your LinkedIn thing, places to let people know what you're doing. If there's local TV advertising and you have a budget for a radio spot or something like that, get it out so you're getting it to a broader audience. All of those things, it really does depend on, the level and the quality. I hesitate because I have been a film producer in television and know that I don't, if it's not a good quality, I would hesitate to put it out there. But that's just me. I would encourage someone to get quality documentation of your event, video, or really great photographer or something like that, so that you give your best presentation.
Well, and that's one of the things that people need you for. If they don't really think about those things, after it's over. And I owned a photo business at one time, and I'm as guilty as anybody. After it's over, people say, "Oh, did you take pictures?" And I went, "Duh, no," because I'm so busy doing what I do. And we want to be. I want to be Superman. I want to present. I want to run the event. I want to get all the people there. I want to manage the whole event. When really, I just need to be present and present, and I need to have people do the recording, because you can use those recordings in fundraising to promote other events. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the most important things I see in an event is where people come together and you develop this new sense of team community. It's what I call a new architecture of engagement, as people come together and are doing something together. I want to encourage people to go to the nonprofitexchange.org, and then you'll see previous interviews, and at the bottom you click on that, and then look for this particular interview, how to produce successful fundraising events. And then we're streaming live on that page right now, by the way. While you guys were talking, I put it up there. But also there's the download the event checklist, and there's 5 main areas you talk about with notes under them. Number 1 is define the goals. What do you want to accomplish here? Number 2, and that's so important. Why do the event? A lot of times I'll see organizations do an event, a lot of volunteer hours, board members are present, and they only bring in a dribble of money.
Right.
Well, that may be not your only goal, and it might be a series of events that would lead to larger funding. So 1 is define your goals, objectives. Number 2, identify your team. And it's really important to have people tasked with specific things.
Yeah.
Not just assume they're going to do it. 3, create an event proposal. Everything you're going to do, put it there. And then 4, create an event budget. That's the B word. And then where's the money coming from? And maybe people say, "Oh, we can't afford that." Well, don't stop there. Think about who you know that could help you fund it, and you don't need to take it out of your regular funding. You can have special funding for this budget. And then, and you're right, it's in your strategy, your overall plan. You want to put this in there with enough money to do a good job. And then the 5th point you make is set a date and book the venue. You don't want to have it all lined up and then find out, "Oh, I can't get the venue." So I'm going to do a sponsor promotion here for a minute, and then Laurien, we'll come back to you for what thought do you want to leave people with? Is there a tip or a challenge or just a thought that you want to leave with at the end of this? And then Russell will close us out before we run out of our hour here. So this is Hugh Ballou, publisher of Nonprofit Performance 360 magazine. Multiple times a year, we put in your hand, if you're subscribed to the print edition, or you can read it online, articles by people like Laurien, thought leaders, specialists, people that have done it before, are good at doing it. And so thinking about how do we perform at a higher standard, how do we encourage our teams and our boards, our committees to perform at a higher standard? You should subscribe to that magazine because there's lots of really good articles. They're not infomercials, it's not fillers. They're real articles where people have done important things. So it's on nonprofitperformance.org. Nonprofit Performance is a magazine, nonprofitperformance.org. And that's printed by our sponsor today, WordSprint. WordSprint is a printing house, they're a mailing house, they're a design house. They make your brand look good. They connect with your donors. And if you're doing events, having a mailing house like that who can print and distribute high quality pieces that people have in their hand, that is important. Wordsprint.com. Go ask for a free interview with Bill Gilmer and his team and find out what they know about how to keep your donors donating. But this is part of the whole package, having events where you're in person with them. Wordsprint.com is where you can find out more. So back to you, Laurien, before we give it to Russell to close out. What do you want to leave people with today?
Well, I heard you say something just a little bit earlier when people say, oh, we can't afford that or we can't possibly do that. Think outside the box. Just have fun with it. Be creative. What do you want? Clearly, again, we go back to the strategic plan. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do this event? And if you can't do it, then what can you do right now to propel what you're ultimately wanting to do? Find the people. If you don't have it, you've got boards, you've got support around you. Just put out saying, this is what we'd like to do. And it's amazing what people around you, even your friends that you have no clue that have any idea what you're doing, they come up with an idea and say, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. That space might be available. Don't give up. Don't be discouraged, because everyone can make a difference, and you can get the word out about what you're doing and increase your outreach and your awareness, which will increase ultimately your donor base.
Thank you.
Don't give up.
Thank you. Lots to think about, lots to unpack. So make sure that you come back to the website and grab a copy of that checklist and get in touch with Laurien for a deeper dive, because there's always more than meets the eye with these things, and there are too many things that can be missed. So you definitely want to talk to the experts. I'd like to thank you again. Thank Bill Gilmer and his team at WordSprint. The right message to the right people at the right rhythm. And he makes some pretty good looking stuff too, which is that last piece. So thank you again for joining us here at the Nonprofit Exchange. We are here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern with experts like Laurien and Hugh, the brilliant young Hugh Ballou here, and other experts when we are here at the CenterVision Leadership Community. Check out the website at centervisionleadership.org. We have more podcasts. You can join our community, and it's free of charge, but we have other levels you can participate in to get deep dive education, replays on our webinars. We have webinars all through 2019 with experts on all sorts of areas that you'll operate on. We have our community here where you can go in and ask questions, live Q&A every week with Hugh. And we have the Nonprofit Performance 360 magazine that you'll want to read. We get leaders from all over the world who make contributions to that magazine. So centervisionleadership.org is your go-to resource for all things nonprofit. We look forward to seeing you here next week at the same time. Until then, thank you for the impact you're making. Go out there and keep making the difference that you make in people's lives every day.